Hello, I am George Rodriguez, a business manager specializing in the agri-market across Latin America. Today I want to talk to you about a subject that has returned to the center of the decision-making table in Brazilian agribusiness. Portal AgroLink published an article by Sean Lennon addressing the rise in fertilizer prices, the reduction in global supply, and Brazil's dependency on imports, precisely at the moment when growers are opening their buying window for the next season. Against this backdrop, biologicals are gaining prominence as an alternative for increasing the nutritional efficiency of crops and reducing part of the dependency on the external market. Let us go to the figures because that is where the technical conversation begins. Around 88% of the fertilizers used in Brazil are imported, mainly from regions affected by geopolitical instability. The picture was aggravated by restrictions on the logistical flow through the Strait of Hormuz, the route through which approximately one-third of the world's fertilizer trade circulates, compounded by the effects of the war between Russia and Ukraine. Even with a gradual resumption of operations, the impacts on prices, supply, and transport costs should persist over the coming months. Data from the Brazilian Confederation of Agriculture and Livestock show that between February and April 2026, Brazil imported 4% fewer fertilizers and paid 16% more for the volume acquired. Over the same period, MAP accumulated a rise of 20%. Translated, lower volume with higher expenditure means less nutrient per reel invested. And when assembling the season's technology package, the grower has three options: reduce the rate, compromising yield; absorb the cost, compressing margin; or increase the efficiency of the nutrient already being applied. It is this third path that places biologicals at the center of the discussion. For Thiago Delgado, president of the National Association for the Promotion and Innovation of the Biologicals Industry, ANPII Bio, biologicals play a strategic role in this context. What I value most in his statement is the precision with which he defines the reach of the technology. He states that Brazil has a high external dependency on nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, which exposes the producer to international fluctuations in price, supply, and logistics. He adds that although biologicals do not entirely eliminate the need for mineral fertilizers, they help reduce part of that dependency by enabling the supply of certain nutrients from the environment and by increasing nutritional uptake, becoming essential tools for greater security, cost stability, and agricultural sovereignty. Now the sizing, because an argument without scale is merely an opinion. According to Delgado, the Brazilian biologicals market already moves more than 7 billion reais per season and accounts for around half of the Latin American market. Brazil is among the three largest markets in the world, and the domestic industry produces 85% of what is sold in the country. There are more than 200 companies registered with the Ministry of Agriculture and Livestock. Growth above 50% between 2022 and 2025, and more than 1,500 registered products. The biologicals law at the regulatory stage is expected to strengthen this environment. There is a decisive timing contrast. Delgado observes that expanding domestic production of mineral fertilizers demands high investment and long-term maturation, whereas biological technologies are already commercially available and adapted to tropical conditions. A mineral fertilizer plant matures in a decade. A qualified fermentation line delivers in the following season. Let us turn to the mechanism, because this is where I speak as a formulator. Biologicals are developed from microorganisms, plant extracts, and other biological compounds. Their principal functions are biological nitrogen fixation, the solubilization of phosphorus and potassium, the stimulation of root growth, and the increased absorption of water and nutrients. Note the nature of these functions. None creates nutrient out of nothing. All act on availability and access. Fixation converts atmospheric nitrogen, abundant and free, into an assimilable form. Solubilization accesses the phosphorus and potassium already present in the soil in unavailable forms, a stock accumulated over years of fertilization. Root growth expands the recovery rate of what has been applied, and greater absorption reduces losses through leaching and water stress. Technically, we are talking about nutrient use efficiency, not an alternative source. The most consolidated Brazilian case is soya, where, as Delgado recalls, the microorganisms linked to biological nitrogen fixation were decisive in reducing dependency on nitrogen fertilizers and broadening the competitiveness of national production. And here comes the most eloquent figure in the article. According to the Brazilian Agricultural Research Corporation, Embrapa, inoculation with bacteria of the genus Bradyrhizobium biologically supplies the nitrogen demand of soya, reducing fertilization costs to around 8 reais per hectare, against approximately 906 reais for conventional nitrogen fertilization. 8 reais against 906 per hectare. I have worked in application development and formulation for many years, and very few agricultural technologies present such an asymmetric return relationship. And this is not a laboratory projection, it is a technology adopted at national scale for decades. The subject gained international projection in 2025 when the researcher Mariangela Hungria received the World Food Prize, the Nobel of Agriculture, for research into biological nitrogen fixation and the use of microorganisms as a partial alternative to mineral fertilizers. These technologies are present in around 90% of Brazilian soya fields and generate estimated savings of between 25 and 40 billion US dollars per year. Beyond Bradyrhizobium, the studies involve Azospirillum brasilense, associated with root development, greater absorption of water and nutrients, and tolerance to climatic stress. For Delgado, this recognition reinforces that the discussion around biologicals occupies a central position in the global debate on food security and agricultural resilience, and that Brazil brings together unique conditions to lead this agenda. Now my reasoning as an agronomist and as a formulator of crop protection products, adjuvants, fertilizers, and biologicals. I shall begin with the favorable points. The first is the cost-benefit relationship proven at commercial scale, with decades of validation and adoption across 9 out of every 10 hectares of soya in Brazil. The second is the reduction of currency and geopolitical exposure. Producing 85% of what is consumed domestically converts a dollar-denominated cost line, subject to logistical blockage, into a cost predominantly in local currency. The third is regulatory maturity, with the biologicals law under regulation, signaling a departure from informality into an environment of traceability and technical accountability. The fourth is the systemic agronomic gain. The biological does not compete with mineral fertilizer. It multiplies its return. The fifth is the competitive advantage of origin, which places Brazil in a position to export biological technology and not merely commodities. Now the points of concern. The first is misaligned expectation. Biologicals do not replace phosphorus and potassium. Nitrogen in soya is a particular case, made viable by a highly specific symbiosis. Transferring that promise to maize, cotton, or sugarcane without technical qualification generates field frustration and delays adoption of the technology. The second is variability of field response. A biological product is a living organism. Temperature along the logistics chain, tank mix compatibility with fungicides and insecticides in seed treatment, spray solution pH, water salinity, and the interval between preparation and application all alter cell viability. In my experience, the variability perceived is rarely down to the microorganism. It is formulation, logistics, and management. The third is the asymmetry of quality between manufacturers. Colony forming unit counts declared versus actual, stability across shelf life, and the absence of contaminants separate a serious industry from opportunism. The fourth is the industrial bottleneck. Scaling fermentation to a consistent standard demands installed capacity, process control, and stabilization, and demand tends to grow faster than qualified capacity. The fifth is trivialization through price. A biological positioned as a cost reducer rather than as an efficiency technology enters commoditization and loses the research investment that sustains the sector's differentiation. And there is one point the article does not address. It is where the formulation industry enters the stage. A market of 7 billion reais per season demands formulation at industrial scale. Carriers compatible with living cells, osmoprotectants and cryoprotectants, culture media and carbon sources for fermentation, control of pH and water activity, adjuvants and surfactants compatible with microorganisms, and drying that preserves cell viability. Whoever masters that layer captures the value of this growth. Whoever does not delivers volume with inconsistent performance and loses the customer in the second season. I shall close with Thiago Delgado's own synthesis, technically correct and commercially honest. He concludes that this is not about replacing mineral fertilizers, but about building productive systems that are more efficient, less vulnerable to external crises, and better aligned with the challenges of modern agriculture. My reading is precisely that. A biological is a multiplier of nutritional efficiency, not a substitute for nutrient. Those who communicate this with technical precision build a lasting market. Those who promise wholesale substitution build only a sales cycle. I am George Rodriguez, and this has been another piece of content from AgroLatam Intel, technical and commercial intelligence for Latin American agribusiness. Until next time.